Okay, so I believe through the power of social media, we are live. Fantastic. So this is Patrick Quayle, your friend of the mortgage business, and you're watching the Wicked Awesome Report. We broadcast this every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. And I'm joined by my co-host, Declan O'Toole from Select Real Estate. Good morning, Declan.
Morning, Patrick. How are you this morning?
Everything is great. And as you can probably tell, we're also joined by another guest. We have Bill Galligan from Wayfinder Collaborative. And in our sort of pre-show prep here for a couple of minutes, Bill was sharing some really interesting information about what he does and how this pandemic has really changed, his business and some of what his clients' needs are. So we're going to dive into that in just a second. But again, this is the Wicked Awesome Report, broadcasting every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. So head over to the Facebook page, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share, and you'll be notified next time we broadcast live. So let's jump into the conversation. And thank you, Declan, for inviting Bill to join us. And Bill, thank you very much for hopping on with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So Wayfinder Collaborative. Okay, so basically you have a business where you provide signage, okay, which may sound, I don't know, on the surface sort of ordinary or mundane, but the way you're describing and what you do is fairly interesting, especially now in the pandemic and seeing different businesses have different needs for different types of signage, temporary, sort of semi-permanent, and even looking forward as to whatever the next phases may bring in a little bit more permanent in different locations. So let's just start off with sort of the basics and the background, Bill. So tell us how'd you get into this business?
Well, so I was saying earlier to you that I don't think anyone goes and looks for they're not seeking out a career in signage. You sort of find your way to it, and that's sort of my story. I trained as a graphic designer, started working with a sign company, and really just fell in love with the industry. Got to see stuff that I designed on paper or on the computer. Eventually built right in the same facility I was in, and it was pretty satisfying. And through that process, I learned a lot about the industry. I learned a lot about the surrounding industries, commercial real estate, construction, and really just developed a real passion for the commercial real estate family that signage falls within.
Yeah, well, that's going to be pretty cool, from start to finish, from design, seeing it actually built and put in place. You get to see literally your creation come to life and put in place. So it's got to be a pretty rewarding part to the business.
Super satisfying to see, and like to go out and touch it and see it eventually be installed is pretty satisfying.
So I know, Declan, you have some questions, but before we jump to that, I just want to ask you a question about the name of the business, Wayfinder. So that's on our pre-show call we talked a little bit about how you came about with that name. I think it's pretty cool. So share with the audience here what that means to you and why you chose to name your company that.
Sure. So signage, wayfinding is a part of the signage industry. It's basically the process of getting somebody from point A to point B, navigating a space, showing key markers throughout to either navigate a campus or an office space and move people along efficiently. But when I was thinking about what I do also, it's to navigate a process. It's to help somebody that maybe doesn't know how to get there, the steps to achieve their signage vision. So a wayfinder is a navigator, and that's the way I see myself. It's really navigating the signage experience from start to finish, from concept to eventual implementation.
Great. So it's not just providing the service, the sign itself. There's a sort of a consulting that goes along with that, I guess is what I hear you saying, to make sure you design the right type of sign that's going to fit all the needs of that business.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance that goes into the industry, and I think that don't get me wrong, there's so many good companies that make quality product. What I want to put focus on is the experience and in making sure that the client that I'm working with feels like they're communicated to the entire time. They know where things are in the process, and that's what I'm focused on and what I'm good at.
You're an experiential signage consulting firm.
Correct.
Okay, so, and by the way, I took that from, I think it was your LinkedIn description. So
That's certainly a mouthful. I'm glad you grabbed that one.
So Bill,
Not
do you?
brevity. Brevity is not my thing. So yeah.
No, that's I think that captures it very well, as well as obviously being a Wayfinder collaborative as well. A question for you, just in terms of you've obviously been going through this current pandemic and COVID-19, et cetera. Has that had any major impact on your communication with your clients, or have you? What's your experience been from the signage industry?
So Wayfinder Collaborative was started at the beginning of the year, just before COVID-19 hit. So timing, in hindsight, probably could have been better, but I feel like I'm doing the hard work up front, and getting through this will make me better in the end. But the silver lining is that once COVID hit, being able to communicate with my clients digitally and electronically, it was just everyone was doing it. It was very normal. So starting off that way made me very nimble and able to communicate with people easily through this process. So I didn't find it terribly offsetting or to be a deterrent in any way. It's actually everyone's been on board with that idea.
Did you find, of course, it's hard to it's not like you can look back at last year and say how you compared it, but do you find initially that, you weren't getting the calls, or that things slowed down before people realized that they needed to actually go about this a different way in terms of going back to work?
Well, I found that, there were certain projects that were definitely put on hold. But there were some projects where they were already well through design and construction was moving along, that they weren't going to stop. And in fact, being able to focus on the design and the signage was was something that they could do while maybe construction stopped. They could put a little more attention and effort into the concept and the design of signage that was going into their space. And so the consulting portion of it, the design portion of it, didn't slow down, or hasn't actually slowed down.
Okay. And who are your clients primarily? Who are the people you work with designing and implementing their signage? Who would be your ideal client?
So my ideal client would be my ideal influencer would be someone in the commercial real estate industry, probably like an owner's project manager, or maybe even a project management firm that is working with a tenant that's looking to either move into a space or that's redesigning their current existing space. It's probably 10,000 square feet and up, and that they have a requirement for everything from large format graphics and sort of like branded content, but also the code required signage, the stuff that you just need in order to move into a space. And I'm able to help in looking at your brand and tie that in with the signage and work with partners to get you there.
Yeah, so that's mostly office space then. So office, the tenants would be office space as opposed to retail or residential use.
Yeah, my focus is definitely on the office market and the tenant sort of fit up market.
Okay, what's your geographic area?
New England. So I'm based out of Providence, Rhode Island, but I've been working in the Boston market pretty much all of my career. I see Providence as just a sort of a suburb of Boston, so easy enough to get around. But generally, the Boston sort of 495, greater New England area.
I think as time goes on, the further you go away from Boston, they're all going to be suburbs at this point in time. Everybody's working remotely.
Yeah.
We covered that on our previous podcast, Bill. It's just sort of as a result of the pandemic, we're starting to see the trend of people moving out of the urban areas into the suburban, and even the next ring out, the exurban, where, some people just can continue to, work from home. They don't need proximity to downtown or the office. So with that in mind, how have, the signage needs of your clients evolved, I guess, and sort of quickly through the pandemic? We have, I would imagine there are some spaces that just wanted sort of temporary signs as they're sort of navigating this and moving through the phases. I think some of that signage is going to turn to more sort of permanent requirements. So maybe some predictions from you in terms of what's happening in the future. What do you think?
I think it was nothing short of remarkable how quickly, as an industry, we responded. I think, just the office industry, you saw a quick response. Phase one, we need to communicate to our employees, to our visitors, that this is the new normal. So you saw blue painter's tape, you saw pieces of plexiglass plastic put up with tape and, rudimentary screws and things like that. And that sufficed for a moment. Mm-hmm. But I think the signage industry was quick to respond in developing solutions, sort of like mass-produced stickers identifying that PPE is required, that social distancing measures, stand here, step here, and those fit a need too. I think that as we look moving into sort of a phase three, more semi-permanent, more than just temporary, I think that the need is changing and that there's an opportunity to brand signage with your space, with your interior visual language, with your values. And that's where I think the next phase is going. Eventually, I see it, what does it look like phase 4 and beyond, where this stuff is just sort of ingrained in us? And what do those measures look like? I would actually, being in the signage industry, maybe it's weird for me to say this, but I almost advocate for like a pullback from all sorts of plastering of temporary signage. That I think there's an opportunity to build in subtle reminders into the office space. So things like striping in the carpet, maybe every 6 feet, or stairways are painted a certain color if it's an up or a down or something like that. So there's a lot of opportunity out there to continue that conversation. So
you're going from overt to subtle. You basically you
don't
tell them.
Yeah, and I think that we're, like I said at the beginning, we were quick to respond to it. We took those cues, and it really starts with the messaging from senior leadership. What is the message they're trying to get across? And then how does that signage, or how do those reminders get implemented throughout your space to sort of be subtle reminders of the message?
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's longer term, it's a good opportunity for proper branding and messaging for your not just employees, but your clients and visitors. So I think we've all been out and about and have visited a store or whatever, and there's the the whiteboard, or a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with black marker, mask required or something written on it, which is fine for sort of the quick response, immediate, we got to get this so we can open up tomorrow morning type of thing. But as this continues to go on, yeah, I mean, something that's more permanent, that's more professional, not just a black marker on a piece of paper, to convey the right message to the employees and the visitors and guests you have to your space. And, with, not making light of it, obviously, but with everything that's going on, you can certainly use that signage to continue branding with your corporate colors, so it looks more professional to those visitors that are coming into your workspace, rather than just the the whiteboard with wear a mask scribbled on it.
Right. Yeah, and the message is going to change. So for Class A office space, I think that's the right. Even Class B, it's like that's what you want to do. You don't want those temporary measures in place permanently.
Right.
There's a different option. I think that even moving forward too, there are if messaging is going to continually change on a frequent basis, there's other things to consider, like the use of digital, where that is something that can be where's your sort of central message center as you enter a space or a building, and is there an opportunity for some sort of digital message to be there where that content can be changed on a moment's notice? It can be tailored to fit brand. And it's also sanitary. I mean, it's something that can be wiped down and cleaned.
Yeah, that's a great point, because up until you mentioned that, we're talking about signage, and I'm thinking of, one permanently affixed to the wall or, whatever. But, so the digital signage, that's something that you work with also?
Right. Yeah. So I have a couple of I would connect people with partners or recommend vendors to help with that, with digital signage.
And I would tend to think that, I guess, long term, as messaging changes and we evolve, that's probably one of the more cost-effective ways to go through it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like to continually buy static signage and replace it, you're dealing with lead times, and the message is going to change. You can't predict how frequently, but digital, you can have it implemented. You pay an upfront cost, and then you can just manage it on your own as frequently as you need to.
Yeah. And, hopefully at some point in a post-pandemic world, that's still something you have in place, and change the messaging to, whatever the flavor of the day happens to be.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's becoming more and more cost effective. So I think that moving forward, I would predict seeing more of that in place, particularly as you enter spaces. I mean, I don't foresee digital signage being scattered throughout a building, but I think at some key points where you need to clearly articulate a bigger message and of what's going on and what the regulations are, that's.
And so, the main entrance or the main intersection, whatever, within a building. Yeah.
And it can always go back to a logo and or whatever message that's not giving directions, if and when that changes.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. So do you see any of those? So I'm sort of leaning back to sort of the real estate world, where we have, for sale signs in the front yard. Do you see any of those sort of like the talking house signs? So are any of those display signs have verbal commands, let's say for the vision impaired people that maybe can't read that? Do you see any of those that have, I guess maybe a Braille version where you push a button to hear a message? Is that something that's out there?
I personally haven't seen that. I'm not saying that it's not out there, but I could see. I don't know. It's like the idea of like smart signage, happening down the road. We have smart refrigerators, so I can't. I don't think it's out of the realm of reality to think that that's coming.
Well, if you develop that, I'll just take a small percentage off the top.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna work on that.
Just make sure it can't be hacked.
Just a small royalty and forever, and that'll just call me Mr. Wonderful if you're familiar.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. So what else do you see, changing in your world? Do you think that we're going to reach a point where, the market's going to be saturated with all this signage, or do you just think that the constant evolution of what's happening is going to continue to change the needs of your clients? Mm-hmm. And then sort of a second part to that, as a changing needs, if we do end up with more people in a work from home environment, how is it changing how you're serving the clients and their needs for signage, I guess?
Yeah. So regarding the market and part of me feels like, I think it will be saturated with all this sort of like protective safety signage, and but I suppose it's fitting a need. I mean, it needs to be used in all sorts of places. So everywhere from like restaurants to like municipalities to like public buildings to the office space that we're used to. I think it's not going to go away, at least anytime soon. And at some point, they'll just shut the switch off and stop printing it or something like that if things kind of reopen. Regarding like what that looks like for me and what it looks like if people are going to be working from home more. I mean, the sense I'm getting from peers in the industry is that the office isn't necessarily going away. It's just, what is it going to look like? I think that there'll be more flex schedules, or maybe they're not going to have the same amount of people working in the office. But I believe that the idea and the concept of the office is not going to go away. And in any building, signage isn't going to go away. ADA is a federal law that requires signage for certain rooms, and that's not going to stop. You need that in order to have a space. So
a great point. With the ADA, obviously you have to be familiar with all the government regulations to make sure. Oops, sorry, I had my.
It's long on that patent.
I know. Just another call coming in. Sorry about that, guys. So with the ADA, you have to be familiar with all the government regulations in terms of making sure that company displays the proper signage that's going to keep them compliant and not get them in trouble.
Right. So I have familiarity and expertise in that. So it's something I can help consult on, or to review a plan to understand what signs are needed where in order to get, to be ADA compliant. But and that's not necessarily the workstation signage, but that's for everything else in the building that you just need to have in order to open up. So
I'd imagine you have a lot of interactions. It's kind of going without saying, but if you're talking about the different stages, so you're dealing with signage at the different stages. You must be spending a lot of time while you're, as you said, you do consult all the way through. You're wayfinding, you're not wayfinding how to set up an office, you're wayfinding in real time through the whole COVID-19 process.
Right. Yeah. It's, what is that? What do you need in this moment? And then the kind of conversation continues after that. What do we need to be planning for down the road?
So Bill, share with us a story, if you would, sort of your most memorable or unique or just weird experience with designing signage. Don't mention, you don't have to mention any names of who the client was, but so I think everybody can sort of wrap their arms around, okay, what signage in an office looks like, but outside of the office environment, what other kind of clients that stand out as being different or memorable?
So in a previous career, the most memorable project I worked on was actually pretty recent. It was in the Seaport in Boston, and it was on the building at 121 Seaport.
Okay.
It's the Oval Building, and doing the sign at the top of the building for ETC. So it was, just the experience of doing that was really cool. What I really love about my job and are the places I get to go to. Being able to be on top of the building and get that view, and then be there to see the sign being lifted up by this like talented group of people, and having them go. I think that building was, I can't remember how many stories that was, way up there. But having to go up the side of the building and be up there on scaffolding, installing this thing. And I remember being on the back side of the glass, watching them like put the bolts in, and just like seeing it click into place, and having this real moment of pride. And that this was a really well done job. And
so, like a fear of heights is kind of like a no-go in your industry.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, if you got a fear of heights, and you're going to be. That's going to be rough for you. You could do that. You could just focus on the plaque signage on the inside of the office building.
No, but that's an interesting story. So that's cool. Sign at the top of the Seaport there. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was super cool. And I have this vision someday where I want to get a map of Boston and like check off the buildings I've been on top of.
Oh yeah, get one of those. So I've seen like the world map where people put the push pins in the different places that they've visited. Yep. Excellent.
Yeah, I got to get up to the Hancock Tower, something like that. That'd be cool. So.
All right. So if anybody watching the show has any connections with anybody that can put a sign at the top of the Hancock building, please reach out to Bill.
Please do, or at least let me tag along and go up there just for the so I can get the push pin.
All right, fantastic. All right, so Bill, what's the best way that someone could contact you if they do have a connection at the Hancock building, or just in general need your services, what's the best way to reach out to you?
So I'm on all the major socials I have, but email and my website is wayfindercollaborative.com. All my contact information is there. Email, phone, and LinkedIn, Facebook,
Fantastic.
Instagram, all those. So.
All right. And we do have you tagged in the headline of the post here. So you personally, as well as the company page. So that's a good head start for anybody that wants to reach out. And again, the sort of the territory, the area you cover is all of New England.
All of New England. Yep.
Fantastic. All right. So let's see if we can get you some push pins all over New England.
I love it.
Hopefully that'll work out.
Great.
Any closing thoughts or questions, Declan?
No, I just say, I suppose the only question I have is, I think we have even answered along the way, any advice for business owners reopening an office other than giving you a call, but any sort of tips that you'd have in terms of how they should go about the messaging?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so know that signage isn't going to be the answer to your messaging, that, it's really it's relying on the business owner or the leadership in the company to develop that messaging. Listen to what's out there, listen to what the CDC is putting out there, use your best judgment, set up your right messaging, and then contact someone like myself to help visualize that and turn that into something visual. Particularly if you want it to be on brand and you don't want, don't get me wrong, I don't want to, there are options, and there are off-the-shelf options if that's what they need. Seek that out. But if you're looking for something that's more in line with your company values or your brand, my recommendation would be work with a professional that can help design that for you and help get that implemented for you.
And you can help them with the messaging as well, not just
yeah, exactly. I have sort of guidelines and standards already set up where this is a typical thing you might see at a stairway, or this is a typical something you might see at as you enter a building. So
yeah, so you're not recreating the wheel on every single transaction. Okay, so what I see you hearing is from concept and sort of consultancy, design and implementation from A to Z. You're the go-to guy.
That's it.
All right, so Wayfinder Collaborative, Mr. William Galligan. Thank you very much for joining us, Bill. Grateful for you taking the time to join us. If you are in need of signage for your location, obviously Bill is the expert in this arena. You want to reach out to him. He's tagged here on the post, and so is his company. So you can reach out to him that way. Bill, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Patrick, and Declan. Thank you for the invite to join. I'm grateful to be here.
Great. So we'll wrap it up. We're hitting right about 20, 25 minutes now, which is our usual length of broadcast. So we'll wrap it up. This has been another edition of the Wicked Awesome Report. Patrick Whaley, your friend in the mortgage business, joined by my co-host Declan O'Toole from Select Real Estate, and our special guest, Bill Galligan from Wayfinder Collaborative. So tune in next week, again, every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m., broadcasting right here on Facebook. Thanks. Let's wrap up the live stream and call it an interview.
Thank you.